Welcome to the Industrial IoT Spotlight, your number one spot for insight from industrial IoT thought leaders who are transforming businesses today. With your host, Eric Walenza.
Welcome back to the Industrial IoT Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Eric Walenza, CEO of IoT One, the consultancy that helps companies create value from data to accelerate growth. And our guest today is Johan Stokking, CTO and co-founder of The Things Industries. The Things Industries provides an integrated chain of LoRaWAN products and services to help companies start building secure end-to-end solutions for themselves and their customers. In this talk, we discuss the value proposition of LoRaWAN and why it has survived and thrived in the fiercely competitive connectivity ecosystem. We also explored the business logic behind connectivity pricing models and why simplicity and transparency are critical for operators of large device fleets. If you find these conversations valuable, please leave us a comment and a 5-star review. And if you'd like to share your company's story or recommend a speaker, you can email us at team@iot1.com. Finally, if you have an IoT research, strategy, or training initiative that you'd like to discuss, please email me directly at erik.walenza@iot1.com. Thank you.
Johan, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, great. So we're going to get to do a bit of a deep dive here on LoRa and LoRaWAN and the network, and then, of course, the kind of the tech stack that's built around the network today. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts here. You really have quite a bit of expertise from different sides. If I'm looking at your profile, and you can maybe fill in some details here, it looks like you, on the one hand, do software development for customers, and then you also have your own product company, which is The Things Industries. And then, if I'm correct, you're also tech lead of a network, which I'm assuming is more of maybe like a nonprofit or kind of a network that's kind of trying to develop an ecosystem around this. But can you help me put the different pieces together of the activities that you're involved in?
Yeah, so my main activities are I'm CTO and co-founder of The Things Industries. We'll get to that later in this podcast, I guess. But it started before that with The Things Network, and that's our developer community that's focused on LoRaWAN. And LoRaWAN is a wireless communication technology for constrained devices. And The Things Network, we started with that around 8 years ago in spring of 2015. Me and Wienke Gieseman, my now business partner. And it started off really as a hobby project, as a side project, because at the time I was doing contracting work, so software engineering for customers that wanted to have, specialty software that didn't exist in the market. And that's how it got started. It really started as a hobby, and then it got so much traction that we decided half a year later to start a business around it, and that is The Things Industries. So I'm still doing both, but my day-to-day activities are being CTO in The Things Industries.
Then whenever I'm talking to a co-founder, it's always interesting to understand the question why, right? So of all the different problems that you could devote your life to solving, why is this the one that you focused on?
Yeah, so maybe it's good to look back at what I did before founding The Things Network. When I was in university, I was already doing software development work for some companies that wanted to have some custom software. And one of my clients was the Dutch speed skating association. So as you know, in Netherlands, speed skating is sort of the number one sports. And it's so big, it's leading in terms of results, sports results, but also anything related to speed skating. So ice making, the suits that they wear, a lot of technology development all happens in Netherlands. So naturally, also the software and all the software for managing competitions and timekeeping and also training is all being developed in the Netherlands. There's nothing you can really buy off the shelf as a speed skating federation. So I sort of, through friends got into the business of developing software specifically for speed skating. And then I focused on competition management, timekeeping, rankings, results, all that stuff. And it was a great project. I got a lot of freedom, and I was, in my early 20s at the time. So it was, a great time to do that next to my studies. But I also realized that there was basically only one client in the world that would be interested in that kind of software. It was the Dutch Speed Skating Federation. Maybe other speed skating countries would be interested, like Norway or Italy or Canada. But I figured already quite soon that they had their own stuff, and they didn't have the money really to get a license of my, huge advanced system that was built for the Dutch Speed Skating Association. So I realized, after a few years of doing that I wanted to do something scalable, and I wanted to build a product that many people can use in many different industries and many different geographies. So I decided to be open to that. And I wasn't really planning on going in Internet of Things, or it didn't really matter as much, as long as it was, business-wise interesting, but also fascinating technology. But first and foremost, scalable. And so I was working in a co-working space in Amsterdam at the time, and there I met Wienke, and we knew each other from Amsterdam entrepreneurial scene, which was quite small at the time. And so we were meeting up for coffee just to chat, and then he said, I was at an IoT meetup in Amsterdam, and there was a presentation about LoRa. This is a really cool technology for setting up IoT networks. And he said, we can set it up ourselves, because, everyone can set up such a LoRa network. And so we got into that and, diving into that. And then, that was in 2015. So we started the Things Network. And it started really as we were both aligned on going into a scalable new field, and really as a side project, because I had my clients still who I was working for, and he had that as well. So that is how it got started initially.
Okay, interesting. So I guess this is a good technology to look at if you're really focused on finding an opportunity to scale here. Remind me, where were we in 2015 in terms of LoRa? What was the development level at that point?
So for us, I think the time was right because it just got started. I think LoRa already had a history of a few years. I think Semtech, which is an American company, acquired Cyclio, which is a French startup who invented LoRa. That was, I think, 1 or 2 years before we started. And Semtech was actively investing on creating an ecosystem around LoRa. So LoRa is just a modulation. It's getting data through the air from one point to another using very little power. But there was no standard around the message formats or any stack, any protocol to communicate. So the LoRa Alliance was formed, which is a standards body to develop LoRaWAN, which is the protocol that uses LoRa. And that was, at the time, I think, when we started that, the LoRa Alliance released the 1.0 specification of LoRaWAN. But it was very, very, very early at the time. We had to explain everyone what LoRa and LoRaWAN was about and what you could do with it.
Yeah, great. Okay, interesting. So you kind of made a bet on a technology, and it seems like, you kind of bet on the right one. Sigfox was more or less a direct competitor. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And what was it, a couple of years ago that they went out of business?
Yeah. So, I think only last year that they sold everything. And now, actually quite interesting, the new Sigfox, so the new Sigfox owner are one of our customers now. So they are switching, or at least they are making their networks ready for LoRaWAN. So a lot has happened in the meantime. But indeed, at the time, 2015, 2016, Sigfox was very big, investing heavily in what they call 0G. So just being able to send just a few dozen bytes from an endpoint to the cloud, maybe a few times per day. And they were doing good business. And another competitor, which didn't really exist at the time, was Narrowband IoT and LTE-M. So everyone was talking about 5G, that it was coming, all the big promises. And I think a lot of companies in the market at the time were quite hesitant adopting LoRa and LoRaWAN because they were like, oh yeah, but 5G is coming in next year or 2 years from now. And that also changed. So indeed, we had to bet on the right technology because it was available. And the big advantage still today with LoRaWAN is that everyone can set up their own LoRaWAN network without being reliant on a single entity like Sigfox, for instance.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's one big, let's say, differentiator of LoRaWAN. What else do you think is behind the success? Because this is a market. I mean, it's not exactly a monopolistic market. There's certainly many competing protocols, but it's at least semi-monopolistic. You can only have so many protocols that are addressing the same kind of bandwidth and problem there, right? There's kind of a handful that can probably coexist. What do you think it is aside from, is it really just primarily the convenience or the independence of the ability to set up your own network, or any other factors that contributed to its success?
I think it's a combination of different things. So indeed, it's the ability to own your network and to be able to set up a private network with exactly the same technology as a public network, which is quite unique in this field. So cellular networks, obviously, narrowband IoT, LTE-M, you really rely on a network operator. Private 5G may change that, but that's going to be very expensive and for really big enterprise networks. So for smaller SME, like setting up it's just as simple as setting up a Wi-Fi network. You can set up a LoRaWAN network. So that's definitely one contributing factor. I think another one is that in the design of LoRaWAN, it was never designed for a particular industry or a particular geography even. So from the very beginning, the people who wrote the LoRaWAN specification were aware that LoRaWAN can be used anywhere in the world. So in the first release of LoRaWAN, there were regional parameters for Europe, United States, Australia, and China. And now there are, I think, almost 10 other regions, which covers 80% of the world, I would say. But also that not only technology-wise, but also not in the collaborations between alliances or in marketing things. It's not focused on metering or logistics or smart buildings or things like that, whereas in other wireless technologies, you often see focus on those industries. So the versatility of LoRaWAN, that's really in the design of the protocol, but also in how the LoRa Alliance works and operates and how specification is drafted. Yeah, I think that's also quite unique, that you can use the same technology for tracking cows in New Zealand as monitoring meeting rooms in a building in New York.
Well, let's get a bit into then what the Things Industries is doing within this space, right? So this is a market where basically any company can set their own network up, but obviously you're a company that is helping, providing kind of a tech stack around this and a service stack around this. So what's your value proposition to supporting companies that are using LoRa?
Yeah, so we are horizontal, so we focus on providing a cloud service that allows our customers to set up their own LoRaWAN network. That's really the core of what we do. So our customers set up their own LoRaWAN networks, they buy their gateways, and they connect that to our cloud, where they have their own virtual environment, their private network, where they can manage the gateways, they can onboard devices, and they can configure how they want to receive, how they want to get access to the data that their devices send. And just like LoRaWAN, we are not focusing on particular industries, and also we are not building an IoT platform. So we are one layer below an IoT platform in a typical architecture. So we really focus on the network layer, and any application layers, so time series databases, visualization, things like that. We are not doing that because we believe that that's a different business, and it's often something that our customers want to have a lot of freedom in, or they want to develop themselves. So we are a very thin horizontal, but it's a really essential element in a typical LoRaWAN network architecture, that you need to have this network server that terminates the LoRaWAN sessions and does security onboarding, network management, optimizing data rates, and optimizing battery life and things like that. So that is what we do.
Gotcha. Okay. And who would be the customers here? I mean, I get, because you're horizontal, I guess it could be anyone, but then companies always, they do have to make choices about who they want to serve in terms of the scale of the customers, the verticals, the problems to solve. How would you define your primary customer base?
So that is also indeed quite broad. We have customers that are building their own products and services on top of our stack. So they build their own devices and they have their own solutions that they sell in a box. So for instance, building monitoring. Sell devices that can monitor meeting rooms and desk occupancy and toilets and things like that. And they sell that to real estate companies. So that's one. We also have smart metering companies as customers that also have their own physical infrastructure. So they already ship meters to their customers. And what they add is a LoRa transceiver so that they can get the data from the meter directly in their cloud. So those are customers that build their own solutions and products. Another one, a great example is WeWork. So that's the co-working space company that's also active around the world. They have a building operating system where they can manage their buildings worldwide, and they have one system that they use everywhere. And they also have a LoRaWAN support in that. But we also have customers like system integrators. So they focus on integrating solutions for their customers. So then the system integrator is specialized in LoRaWAN, and their customers, if they need an IoT solution, then this is just one of the things that they have in their toolbox. And those are the customers that are, they know typically what they're doing. So they know a lot about LoRaWAN, and we don't necessarily have to educate them to become successful because they have been successful with multiple LoRaWAN projects in the past. So it's quite broad, I would say. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we can focus on WeWork, or if there's another customer, but I think it's always useful to focus on one specific case and kind of do a little bit of an end-to-end of what was your role in supporting them, whether it's in the tech stack, in advisory, in operations. So, if you think WeWork is a good case, we can use that. If there's another one you prefer, but can you give us a bit of a walkthrough, kind of an end-to-end of how you were supporting one of these customers?
Yeah, so let's take Deutsche Bahn as an example. That's the German railway company. It's always a great example because they have been working with LoRaWAN since the very early beginning. They had some really visionary, innovative people in their system, in their own system integrator company at the time, and they are really big. So in Europe, they are by far the biggest railway company with a huge infrastructure, owning not only the rail, but also the trains, and they manage the stations. So it's like a massive European infrastructure company that's not only active in Germany, but also they have their high-speed trains that go through Europe. So they use LoRaWAN for many different things, not only their buildings. So they are already like a big real estate company, even apart from the rails and the trains. How that works is that Deutsche Bahn is a company that's typically not willing to use a cloud service provided by a 25 people startup from Amsterdam, right? I mean, their operations are too critical. And we would also not easily go through a whole certification process to be able to manage a cloud service for them. So the way we work with them is that they license our product, the ThinkStack Enterprise, which is our flagship product, and they operate it in their own cloud. And we don't have access to that cloud. We visit them to train them on how to install and update their environment. And they have operations specialists that manage that product in their own cloud. So we provide them with software, with licenses, with training, and they build their own network themselves. And wherever we can help them become more successful, we help them. But we typically do that through making introductions within the LoRaWAN ecosystem, because we are not really in the business of writing custom software. Like I was with the Speed Skating Federation, I still learned from that I don't want to go back into custom contract work for customers. So, but there's a great LoRaWAN ecosystem around us that we can make introductions to make them successful. And that might be in building applications for coverage mapping, or finding the best gateways, or figuring out which dashboards they should use, or other IoT platforms, and things like that.
Gotcha. Great. Very clear. Thanks. Let's then look at your tech stack. So on the website, the way that you map it out is, well, maybe this is not the tech stack. Maybe this would be more looking at the function set or the process. So you have adding end devices, bulk import of end devices, registering gateways, inspecting live data, network operations, and then separately you have a set of features that you're providing around this. So how would we break down the capabilities and then the processes around the platform?
Yeah, so that's a great one. So, like I said, we focus really on the network layer, but in LoRaWAN, that means also that you would need to be able to add and manage devices, and if you look at onboarding devices, then there are already almost a rabbit hole of things you have to deal with. So, setting up a small LoRaWAN network is quite easy. You can set up a gateway. We have documentation to do that. There are many different gateways that work with the thing stack. But onboarding devices is the same thing. You can buy devices off the shelf and you can add them to your LoRaWAN network. But doing things at scale requires additional features like the ability to import thousands of devices at the same time, and make sure that all those settings are correct. Because with a protocol like LoRaWAN, you don't really have a channel with those end devices to negotiate capabilities, or the device cannot advertise the version that it's using, or the payload format that it supports. So you have to have a lot of out-of-band knowledge about a LoRaWAN end device before it can join your network. And so for that, we introduced a device repository, which is an open source repository on GitHub, where device makers can contribute their device profiles and their codecs. So it's really a collaborative effort with device makers, and it helps our customers to make sure that all the settings of their devices are correct, because we can load those LoRaWAN profiles and codecs. So that's just one aspect. That's just device onboarding. But indeed, if you have your devices then in the field and you have hundreds of gateways covering your devices, you also want to be able to see how your network is doing. So you want to see if your gateways are working in the first place, but also what are the noise levels? Are there frequencies that are problematic because there are other users of those frequencies around you? Maybe you need to do some optimizations. Maybe you need to add another gateway somewhere to add capacity to the network. So that level of insight is also one of the areas where we invest heavily in to provide that insight to our customers. So that's really on the network level. So just the ability to see how the devices are doing, if they're healthy, if the link is correct. Just like in traditional internet, you can have packet loss, and it's similar in LoRaWAN. So we also measure that in a network to see, hey, is there high packet loss with these devices? Should we do something about it? And then on the application side, so extracting the data from our network, that's also one of the areas where we invest heavily in, because this is most important for our customers, is that they want to have a reliable data stream of telemetry that their devices are sending. And they want backups. They want us to support different formats. Maybe they want to have a simple MQTT connection with the thing stack, or they want to use webhooks or another IoT platform integration. So that's all part of the solution that we call the thing stack.
Let's see. So you have this tech stack. You also have a number of different deployment options, and I guess the deployment options are going to be, these are fairly standard, right? So it's cloud. It looks like you have particular integrations with AWS Launcher that or with AWS that you've built. There's enterprise. There's dedicated private cloud. So I, to some extent, those are the standard options. But I'm still kind of interested in how you, as the CTO, view the trade-offs between these different options. And I guess those could be viewed from a cost perspective, maybe a simplicity, feature sets, et cetera. But if you were advising a customer what questions, what criteria would you want to evaluate to determine which of these deployment options would be a better fit for them?
Indeed, we have different deployment models of the Think Stack. It is also one of the design choices that we made when we designed Think Stack back in 2018, I would say. That's the foundations of the product as it is today. And one of the requirements was that we wanted the same products to run embedded. So even on-site, on-premises, for industrial customers that are running factories, for instance, and they don't want to run their operations through a cloud service because it's so critical what they do, or it's hard for them to have a reliable internet connection somewhere remote in a remote factory or on a platform on sea, for instance. So that was one requirement, but also we had customers that, like Deutsche Bahn, are using their own cloud, and they already have everything set up, their own processes, security, compliance, all kinds of requirements, and they want to be able to run the Think Stack in their own domain. And then, of course, we have our managed service, our SaaS service, the Think Stack Cloud, which is what we prefer that our customers use because it's already deployed by us. It's really easy to onboard customers. But sometimes there are reasons to go on premises, again, because you cannot always rely on an internet connection, or you have to go with our enterprise deployment for private cloud because of compliancy or other certification or reasons like that. But typically, I would say 95% of our customer base is using the Think Stack Cloud.
Okay, so that solution works. Yeah.
One of the trends that we see here is that I thought also 10 years ago that all the workloads were moving to the cloud, and that it was just a matter of getting better internet connections, and if the internet connections were fast and reliable, then there would be no reason for shops and factories and things like that to not use a cloud service. But we also sort of realized and I changed my opinion about this as well, that there are really good reasons to have also a LoRaWAN network server on site for critical workloads. And also for edge intelligence, having business logic close to the devices and the applications that are also running on the edge. And I think this is also a broader trend that we also see in cloud services in general. If you also look at what Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure is providing, is they also realize now that edge is a deployment model that has to be working closely together with their cloud services, and it will not only be everything in the cloud. So one of the things that we are exploring is an embedded distribution of the Think Stack, which runs somewhere on site, and it can run completely offline. But if there is an internet connection, it would synchronize with the Think Stack Cloud, where everything is ultimately managed and all the security and keys are and things like that. And then customers can still run the Think Stack embedded in their shop, in their factory, on site. So those are also the hybrid deployment models that we are exploring, because this is one of the trends that we see in the cloud space.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, there's certainly a lot of movement towards edge computing, and cybersecurity threats are not going anywhere. So even if internet connectivity improves to a point, there will still be a set of devices that people want to manage from the edge. Let's look a little bit at pricing as well. I really like the transparency that you have here on your website, and so it's always kind of interesting to understand the logic behind a particular business model or pricing model. And here you have it broken down into a few different decision stages, right? So it's what's your entry level, and here you basically have kind of I'd say a standard option, and then maybe a kind of an entry level option for people that are more in exploratory stage. Then you allow choosing the different deployment options, the number of device bundles or the number of devices in your bundle, support plans, terms. So, I mean, this is all very transparent on your website. Anybody that wants to kind of look through can do that. But I'm interested as a entrepreneur, as a business owner, what was the thought process that you walked through to determine that this is the best pricing model for your business?
This was actually really hard, and it was actually so hard that a few years back we decided just to come up with pricing and just put something out there and see if it sticks. So it was really trial and error, and because LoRaWAN is so versatile, it can be deployed in so many different industries and so many different regions. It's really hard to have one pricing plan for all markets and everywhere. And so we wanted to come up with something because we want to be transparent, and we also don't have the capacity in-house to negotiate with each and every customer about pricing. So we only have 2 FTE sales in our company, which is very, very little, I would say, for a tech startup. I think a lot of tech startups are sales heavy, at least what I see around us. So in our company, it's only less than 10% is doing business development, and so to make it easy for them and not spend time on too much pricing negotiation, we decided to put the pricing out there and make it public. Because it's also a great conversation starter. You know, if there are customers that really have special requirements that are outliers in our model. Because they consume a lot of traffic or very little traffic, or they have very large deployments of devices, like way more than 100,000. That's part of our list of pricing. Then we obviously have room to negotiate. But for us, making the pricing public and also making it only based on a number of devices and not taking into account number of gateways or the number of messages that they send. Yeah, I think that was a bold move a few years back, and sometimes it bit us because there are customers who are consuming quite some traffic with us, and they are not reaching the margins that they should be having with us, and sometimes it's the other way around. So. It's also, I think, a move that really keeps our competition sharp. We notice from customers when we have these sales conversations is that competitors they have to match our pricing because that's it also sets a reference in the market. I would say it has multiple benefits. Yeah, for sure.
No, absolutely. No, it's funny how challenging it is, right? Because you're solving, often as a tech company, you're solving these really difficult technical challenges, but then often it's the pricing model and the business model that's the most confusing, because there's, at least with the technical challenge, in the end, you can validate that it's correct, right? You can test it and you can say, yes, this is the solution. We've got it. With pricing, you don't really know. There could always be some more optimal business model, optimal pricing model. And the only way to know is kind of get it in front of a lot of customers and kind of try to test the results. But even then, it's hard to do A/B testing with a pricing model when you have, 20 customers and you're scaling up.
Yeah, exactly. So we did that before we published our pricing. So we did a lot of trial and error, but at some point we decided, okay, this is going to be it. And exactly as you say, I mean, building a LoRaWAN or building a low power IoT network in general is already hard enough. So if we also come up with a complicated pricing scheme, then we make it even harder for them. So if we can make it easy, then we do that. And one of the ways we do that is building the thing stack and making it easy to onboard devices and not having to deal with all kinds of parameters that you have to know. But at the same time, also the pricing, we want to make it really easy. And one of the main reasons why we went with this pricing model is that we wanted to match the value for the customer. So it's we believe that if you deploy 1,000 devices, then that is twice as valuable as having 500 devices, because you have twice as many devices that generate data. You can use that to measure stuff, so it sort of scales with the value that it generates for customers. Whereas if you have a message-based model, then you can't really say that 10 messages are as valuable as 5 messages, because it really depends on what is in that message. What is the density of that message? Is it redundant message, or is it Is it an alarm that's triggered, and sometimes a device sends one message per day, but it could be more valuable than 10 messages sent by another device. So that we wanted to stay away from that discussion, and we thought, okay, we do everything by the number of devices and keep it very simple for our customers, so they can just put it in Excel and see if the return on investment works for them.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so I'm looking at your website here. I've chosen the ThingStack Cloud as the deployment model, and then if I look at the pricing, so let's say a standard support plan, 1,000 devices looks like it's going to be about $480. So let's say about $500 a month. So that's 50 cents per device per month. If I scale that up to 100,000 devices, that moves to 5,000 a month. So then we're looking at 5 cents. So it looks like there's a lot of economy of scale for moving those up. Does that kind of reflect the total cost that somebody should assume to, obtain connectivity? Are there other costs in the tech stack? I mean, obviously there's a lot of other costs related to the tech stack, but just in terms of connecting the device, does that kind of reflect what the price level somebody should expect is?
Yeah. So the price that you mentioned of the 1,000 devices, that includes support. So if you can also go with the 1,000 devices without support. So we have customers who are confident that they can figure out everything themselves through documentation, or because they already had other successful deployments in the past. And I think then the price is at least 190 euros. So that's the starting price per month. So that's even less, but indeed we have a very progressive pricing model with high volume discounts for larger customers, and that's really what they pay. So our customer base pays the list prices typically. You can get some discounts if you commit to 1 year or a quarter upfront. Things like that, but that's just typical. The other costs that customers would have to need to consider, of course, is the hardware. So they would have to set up gateways and purchase end devices, and they have their own application workload. But typically, we want to be certainly not more than 10% of the total cost of ownership of their IoT solution. So we certainly don't want to be cost heavy in their entire picture.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. Well, maybe we can wrap up here, Johan, with a bit of a discussion about the future. And I guess we could look at this from two perspectives. One would be the LoRaWAN perspective. So what is exciting on the horizon for LoRaWAN as a protocol, as a technology? And then second would be the things industries. What do you have either in your product development pipeline, in your market expansion pipeline? What is it that you're personally excited about in the business?
Yeah. So I think in LoRaWAN, I would almost say that the less exciting things happen in LoRaWAN. That's also is also a good thing. The stability of the specification and making sure that all the puzzle pieces fit well together, and that there is a certification program. I think that's the most important thing. I spend about a day a week contributing to the LoRa Alliance technical committee in various subcommittees, working on the LoRaWAN specification, but also APIs between LoRaWAN network servers. So if you if you want to use roaming with other networks or external security services, things like that. And I think one of the most exciting things that I see now is that things are coming together, but not necessarily that we add a lot of features to LoRaWAN, because I think LoRaWAN is already suiting the most of the needs of in the market. We are, though, one of the things that I think are quite interesting is that we start adding support for different cipher suits, so different cryptographic schemes in LoRaWAN, and that allows LoRaWAN to adapt to requirements set by NIST or the European Union about how to protect data, how to encrypt it, which algorithms to use. And it's a bit of a long-term thing, but I think it's a great thing to have in the LoRaWAN architecture, that it's ready for also future cryptographic schemes requirements set by different regulators. But it's also quite boring. A lot of things are just putting the puzzle pieces together, making sure that certification works, and that customers, if they see the LoRaWAN brand, that they know that it works, basically. On our side, as a company, we really focus on product leadership and operational excellence. So a lot of efforts in our engineering team are making sure that our services are running better, smoother, faster, more cost efficient, and that is not always visible on the outside. So we do a lot of effort, a lot of exciting things. We're going to throw a party 2 weeks from now, as with the engineering team, because we did a lot of technical debt removal in the thing stack. Nothing visible from the outside. Everything is backwards compatible. None of our customers would notice this, but for us, it's a very big a big thing. I think it's also good as a company that we invest significant amount of time in making sure that our tech stack is up to date and that we don't carry a lot of technical debt forward. So those are things I can get excited about, but it's not something visible for customers. I think other things that will be visible for customers is our network operations center. It's a new product that we released a month back as part of the Think Stack. And this allows you to have really nice dashboards where you can see gateway traffic rates, noise levels per channel, but you can also see which gateways are covering which end devices and vice versa, but also historical information about how devices and applications are doing. So a lot of tangible insights, and also getting alerts from when gateways go offline, and those kind of network management features that is definitely on the horizon. Another thing that we're adding, that we have on our roadmap, is the ability to detect if there's something off with your device fleet, because we are working with the device maker community and allowing them to specify normal behavior of their devices in the device repository. And by observing the actual behavior in a network layer, we can see if there's a discrepancy between what is normal or what is desired versus what we observe as a network. And with that, we can give very tailored insight and feedback to both back to the device maker, but also to our customers. Because again, with LoRaWAN devices, you don't really have this always-on connection with your IoT device. It's not like a Raspberry Pi that runs somewhere. You can always access it. You can always get information. But sometimes you have to wait a day, or if it really gets bad, you have to visit the physical end device and see what's going on. So making sure that our customers don't have to go out in the field, because they have the network operations center and they get insight from our automated insight from our product about how healthy their device fleet is. Yeah, those are big features that are really helpful for our customers to reduce their cost and their confidence in their LoRaWAN deployment.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I was talking to a cybersecurity company a few days ago, and they were also basically looking at this topic of operations, so device operations. And I think that seems to be a big trend, right? So the companies, so it could be connectivity provider, could be cybersecurity provider, but then because of the nature of your core business, you have this data flow, and you're able to kind of mine that data and understand operational behavior, and then convert that into information that's useful for maintenance teams, useful for device users, et cetera. It seems like a whole new area to provide value, right, for your customers. It's just a matter of converting that data into useful information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the technical debt topic as well. I feel like every company should have some kind of internal award, right, for technical debt removal. It's very important work that doesn't really get recognized, right? But that's kind of what keeps the world moving.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I mean we even invite former colleagues who worked with us, 2 years, 3 years ago. We even invite them to our, technical debt parties when we, removed something, and it's really part of our company culture to keep an eye on that, because it's really hurting the motivation of engineers going to work when they have to, work with stuff that should have been fixed, or old dependencies, or they're continuously thinking, okay, we should have done this differently. And then, it's really good if the engineering leaders or even me as a CTO is making sure that everyone can commit serious time to removing technical debt and that we don't always have this feature focus. Because I think that's the best way forward for us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the fact that you bring people, right? You say, "Hey, Johan, we finally removed the code that you wrote back in 2019, and
yes,
it.
come drink beer with us." Yeah. No, that is really what the things in working for the things industries is about for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, Johan, I think we covered a good bit of territory here. Any details that we haven't touched on that are important for folks to know?
In May, we are going to IoT World Solutions Congress in Santa Clara, where you can meet Winke and myself. And we have a really nice device, a wall of fame, with all kinds of LoRaWAN devices. And then in September, 21, 22 September, if I'm not mistaken, we have the Things Conference in Amsterdam, which is the major LoRaWAN event of the year. It's one of our side activities that sort of escalated into organizing a big show with 1,500 people from all over the world. That's only about LoRaWAN, basically technology, but also solutions and finding business contacts. So, if people are interested in learning more about LoRa and LoRaWAN, if they're in the US in May, then please come to us in the Santa Clara event, and otherwise in September in Amsterdam.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, and then folks, I guess, can also reach out at thetingsindustries.com. I think it's possible to connect with your team there. Johan, really, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Industrial IoT Spotlight. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at IoT1HQ and to check out our database of case studies on IoT1.com. If you have unique insight or a project deployment story to share, we'd love to feature you on a future edition. Write us at eric.walenza@iot1.com.